Wonderful. There's a picture that was just taken recently, I believe, there of a lot of the attendees. Maybe Ann's bringing that up for me. And I think that day there might have been about 100 there.
More,
About that?
more than that.
And this was this March, I believe?
Yeah,
I don't know that all of you get this gospel news. It's the news about what's going on around the world in the Carelinks world and the Christadelphian Advancement Trust. But this picture in the centerfold shows the size crowd that's there, and you'll see a lot of these same people in the pictures that we have. When we go back every year, we see a lot of familiar faces. Most of them are familiar faces. There's always a few people that we remember that aren't there. Sometimes they passed on, they died. Hopefully, are just sleeping and waiting the return of Christ. And others have moved on to other areas of the country. They're not the most stable population, being the type of people they are. Some have, I don't think very many seem to have drug problems, but alcoholism tends to be a problem. Under the Soviet system, vodka was cheaper than Coca-Cola. And they didn't seem to worry about it too much from a government's point of view. So a lot of them tend to be alcoholics, but not all of them. For the most part, they're sincere people, very stable, very sincere in their faith, and they love coming to have the time to warm up, to socialize with other people, and to be able to learn more about Jesus Christ, be refreshed not only physically but also spiritually in the Lord, and they look forward to it. And they come in every day with a big smile on their face. So many of them will give you a hug, and you just see it in their eyes. It's a warmth that you can just tell. They have a love for it all. So let me get my pictures going. I did have a little bit of trouble with my photo program. I don't know why, but we'll get off that one. Go to the thing. There's just some background music to it, but I'll give you a basic sense of it. This is the Bible Center. It's actually a former casino. It doesn't look like much on the outside, but it's actually quite suitable for what we need on the inside. It has a large room for them to hear Bible lessons every day, also a large dining area, as well as right now a commercial kitchen. The area that it's in is surrounded strongly by a great deal of former Soviet-era buildings that you see here. Cement buildings that are, I think, prefabricated and kind of hodgepodge together at the last minute. Not intended to last much more than 20 or 30 years. As you can see with the seams in them, the way they were kind of precast. But they are suitable, and I believe since the time of the breakup of the Soviet era, they were basically sold to the tenants, so people now own them and don't want them to be torn down. A number of the older wooden structures aren't in particularly good shape. This is a nightclub that was formerly across the street. This last year we went there, it has closed, but it's open 24 hours a day. So it's not the best of neighborhoods, but it's not a terrible neighborhood on the other hand, because if you put this kind of a facility in a professional area with lawyers and doctors, they don't tend to be really receptive to seeing a lot of homeless people show up at night. So you'll see a lot of the pictures. This is the commercial kitchen, which had to meet the municipal standards for hygiene, and they're as strict as they are right here in North America. This is an area where the baptismal tub is, which is behind there. You'll see another photo of it in a minute. And that's for the paperwork. There's a lot of reporting to do for the Department of Health. And that's the baptismal tub, which has probably had hundreds, if not thousands, of baptisms over the years. And at the beginning of the day, we're getting ready to do the groceries that have been purchased. It's sanitized, that kitchen, every single day, twice a day, before and after you cook. And we have to sanitize ourselves first at this onset and put on aprons and hairnets and all the things that you'd expect in any kind of a sanitary kitchen. This is a large store. We would think of it as Walmart if we were. It's called Hyper Maxima, meaning Hyper Maxima, and it basically sells dry goods and groceries, but it's the best place to get the groceries for a good price, and we watch the prices as best we can. We watch for deals when things are on sale. We buy extra for the days ahead in order to stock up, especially a lot of the staples like sugar and go on sale fairly frequently, others not so often. The protein added to the meal might be pork or chicken or beef. We buy what's on sale if we can get it. All the soups that we make are highly substantive, always with a good round of vegetables. Potatoes, carrots, onions are in almost every soup. If it's borscht, which they love, has lots of beets in it, and they sell beets there like we buy potatoes. So it's a big culture for it. That's the factory across the street that makes all the heat for the area buildings. They don't have individual furnaces in the buildings. They ship out heat like we do electricity. So they just pay a central bill. This was to show you how we can use Google Translate on that phone there. You see it says baking powder in the upper left there. The labels are in Latvian. There it is. And we were trying to realize what this was. We were trying to buy baking soda that day. There's a great deal of sugar. It's the best junk food in the world. But we don't buy much of that. We buy wholesome. This is that would be the ingredients that would have to be prepared that day to make borscht soup. You can tell because the beets are on the end there, with celeriac and potatoes, carrots, onions, and this is Hannah Aldersley. She's from New Zealand. She loves the camera. And there's Ann, my darling bride, chopping and peeling and cooking. That's Maxim, a Ukrainian brother, speaks mostly Russian. Very little English, but a little bit of broken English. We were often using Google Translate, trying to communicate with each other. And the cabbage, and Hannah, and chopping. This is a commercial stove that we use. These kettles hold 25 liters of soup each, and we cook in 2 to 3 kettles a day. This is Maxine and I figured out the wonders of Google Translate. The area, the climate, it's much like it is here. I have to say, I always thought that the whole place was totally indigent, because every time I read the Carelinks, all I saw was indigent people, but it's really a pretty well-developed nation. There is money there. A lot of Scandinavians will come over and sell their homes in Scandinavian countries and live in Latvia for half the cost. Now what you saw back there is the coffee and tea that we make for them each night. They come in at 4 o'clock, have an hour to grab a coffee, tea, and socialize with each other. And there's quite a few. They come in and they were lined up at the door. I don't have photos of the lineup, but they have to get breathalyzed. It seems odd running an ecclesia where you have a breathalyzer at the door. But because of the alcohol, you really don't want them in if they've been drinking. And they recognize that if they have been drinking, we're not going to let them in. They're asked not to come that day. And, but they're welcome the next day. You know, it's just a problem because they often are loud, violent, and unyielding. In addition to being able to just warm up, it gives them a social time, which we're social people, we're social animals, we need that. Being alone on the street is hard. It's hard to survive. And it's not to say that they don't find ways of surviving. If we've been in town, we see them in the library, we see them in a mall. But they're doing what they have to do to survive. So they come to us and they're looking for physical nourishment, and they're also receptive to the spiritual nourishment. And certainly, admittedly, some of them are there just for the food. But oddly, sometimes those are the ones that will stay afterwards and help us clean up after the end of the day, because all the floors have to be washed, the rugs have to be vacuumed. It's a very clean building. This is some split pea soup we made the first year we were there. I think we were there for 4 weeks. We made borscht every day except for 2 days, and those 2 days we made the split pea soup. The only 2 recipes we knew. We now know about 12. So fortunately their diets expanded, but they still basically the same vegetables, protein, some dairy, like you saw being put in. Now here you see them being taught. That's Maxime up front. Previously it was Duncan. They're taught in Russian. I wanted to show you the screen. That's the Bible. It says John 1:1, and that's it's in Russian. That's how they don't all have Bibles, but they all have. They can all follow it on the screen. That's Anna, one of the Latvian sisters, along with Maxime. They're mailing out some Bibles.
Это не все. Он после этого писал им, избавиться начальством этих посланий, которые у нас есть, является, то, что он писал, тех, которые он окрестил. So these letters of John are the letters which he wrote to those who earlier he had baptized. И в первом стихе, verse 1, он сказал, что это такой жест, чтобы называться и быть детьми Божьими. Вот народ Лав является жизнью. И то же самое будет с нами, когда Иисус явится здесь на свете.
So this is Duncan teaching to them in Russian. And because some of us were in the room, English-speaking people, he would segue back and forth between the English and the Russian. Normally, he would just study in the Russian because that's all most of them all understand. There's only 2 or 3 of them that might actually understand English. This is, in this case, that's before the meeting where they're drinking coffee and sometimes playing chess. Maxime is the Ukrainian brother in Duncan's absence when Duncan would be away for months at a time. Maxime was doing the pastoral care there, so we would work quite extensively with them. That's that same nightclub across the street. And here they are being served. Everything has to be handed to them. They're people of the street. They're not necessarily very clean. Sometimes they have bugs or they're not very, we don't want them to get other people sick. So we have to hand them the bread, hand them the utensils, hand them the bowl of soup already served. They understand. They're pretty receptive. They'll pretty much comply with whatever criteria we give them. And you see the hairnets, the aprons, all the hygiene criteria expected of us. And the city's pretty fussy about it. And they're not all that excited that we're feeding the poor. Somehow they think if we stop doing that, they'd evaporate. But it's because it tends to collect them together. I'm not sure what it is. They don't really have a love for the Russians being there. It's just kind of a part of their former history that they don't like. Here we have a baptism with Duncan and Maxime, immersing this man. I don't remember his name. Do you remember his name? It was 4 years ago.
Gregory.
Gregory. Being welcomed afterwards. This is the many books that Duncan wrote. I didn't ever realize he had more than Bible basics. But it's amazing what you learn when you go into a man's home. This is the flat that we stayed in the first year. It's where Duncan lives when he is in Riga, and it's in the 2nd floor of that building. That's a nearby Catholic school. And then the rest of the pictures, I'm just going to let them run through. They're really pictures of Riga downtown. That's the National Library designed by the same guy, same architect who did the Sydney Opera House in Australia. This is one of the landmark church spires in town, and they do a very large business actually in tourism. It's one of the best and oldest preserved European cities that never seemed to get bombed out in one of the world wars that went by. So they do get a tremendous amount of tourism. Even when we're there in December, there'll be a lot of Chinese people on massive bus tours and things like that. I'll let these run just to give you a flavor of it. It's not pretty much the end of the tour for the Riga Soup Kitchen, but these people come every day. The numbers, we track them very carefully. How many people come every day? How many we feed on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Sundays? Because we want to know so that we make the right amount of soup. We don't want to throw anything away because we made too much. That's wasting the donated money. We don't want to have not enough so that people are not going away fully nourished. So we track them. Some days we do it, particularly Monday and Thursday seem to be heavier crowds, and other days are lighter. But we give them now, they also get a snack, maybe a piece of candy, a clementine, or something else to add something to their meal besides just vegetables all the time. That cat is one of their iconic things you see on a lot of their tourism trinkets. Canyon-like streets. So then the money is monitored quite closely by Mel and Andy Doughton, and every day the receipts are photographed and texted to them. They can watch how the money's being spent. Any other expenses for cleaning supplies are also done that way. And we try to stretch the money as far as we can, buying the goods at best prices that we can get, and stocking up on stuff that has sales on it, and stretching it when we can too. Sometimes you might have made soup for 60 people and 90 show up. And so we always keep a small inventory of extra beans and things that you can use to stretch a soup, and put some extra tomato paste in so the stock comes up. So there's different things you can do, and you learn all the little tricks when you work in that situation. But the people are really receptive. when you give them the soup, the look in their eyes, sometimes they just put their hand on their chest and they nod their head. They know to say thank you, as so many of us might know to say gracias to someone in Spanish, even though that might be the only word we know. Thank you is a word that's commonly known. A lot of times they'll say that, sometimes the spasibo, which is the Russian word for thank you. But you really see it in their eyes. They do appreciate it. Many of them try to stay after and help us do the cleaning because it's quite a chore every day in order to keep up with the health standards. But it's done collectively, and it works quite well. It's a successful mission, and it's responsible for a great deal of baptisms. That's the tour. I really have to say, a lot of people have contributed to the needs in Riga. And I really want to thank you, because when we're there and we get the privilege of actually handing them the soup, I wish you could see what we see. It is so heartwarming to see someone who has no means of feeding themselves to receive that food. And in fairness, they're not all homeless. Some of them have an apartment. But if they don't pay their rent and the utilities, they lose that apartment and then they are homeless. So they tend to pay that first. And then they're on our doorstep looking for some food. But it's that lack of hope in life that drives people to Christ. And that's why it's a successful mission. That combined with that, they are a bit of a blank slate. They haven't been burned by a religion. They've never known Jesus Christ. So when they learn the hope of the gospel, they embrace it much more readily at their own time when they're ready. And then they come up and they express the desire that I want to be baptized. So.
Do you do any talks while you feed
The first year I did do some talks. I did the book of James, the letter of James. And I was doing that with Maxine, and neither one of us could speak each other's language. It was quite complicated. And we were using Google Translate extensively, but in latter years, no. Maxine just took over all the pastoral work, and Ann and myself, and sometimes there was other helpers there. We would mostly work